You've got Trump. Well, I mean, you can really go back to 2023. It was one of the first times I remember when he's talking about his, if elected, he's going to end the Russia-Ukraine war in a day, he famously said, and then he won the election. And then shortly after he got inaugurated, he said, well, okay, maybe 100 days. Trump himself said maybe a few weeks. So the time comes getting slow. Everything they're talking about is about ending this war. And then you go over to Kiev, where all these European leaders were meeting, saying something different. What is your understanding of why the disconnect between the two poles?
Well, they actually just passed in the Ukrainian parliament in the Rada a vote of confidence for Zelensky as the president out of his mandate since May of last year. But the first vote that went through, they rejected it. So clearly there was some behind the scenes maneuvering. I'm sure some European officials were directly involved in, swinging certain Ukrainian parliamentary members to give a vote of confidence to Zelensky. But within their statement, they're blaming Putin for not being able to have elections in Ukraine. It's blaming Russia, and it creates a kind of vicious cycle because Russia's said they can't really ink a permanent deal until Ukraine has elections. Ukraine saying we can't have elections until we win, until Russia's defeated. They're still blaming Putin for not allowing them to have elections. So it's setting it up for the status quo in the midterm.
I keep hearing that over and over because, Trump famously last week, or infamously, depending on your perspective, said Zelensky was a dictator without an election, and he wanted that to get resolved. And obviously that's Russia saying the same thing, that they said until that happens, we can negotiate with Zelensky. We can't sign a deal with him. That seems to be their position, at least at this point. One of the Ukrainian ambassadors that was talking to a UK interviewer, and he was just incredulous at the idea of asking them to hold an election in the middle of wartime while they're having this conflict here. And he said, who would ever do such a thing? And the first thing that come to my mind was Vladimir Putin, because in the same year that Zelensky was supposed to have an election, Russia did. Or maybe, I don't know, the United States. In the middle of our civil war, we had a presidential election. So everyone wants to hide behind that as long as there's martial law, according to their constitution, they can't have a presidential election. But what would stop them from just canceling the martial law and having an election?
Zelensky kind of finds himself in the same position as Benjamin Netanyahu in Israel. They both need the war to go on in order to stay in power. The war stops when there's a sigh of where people can catch their breath, and nationally, collectively, they're out of power. I mean, that's just kind of obvious. The worst part about this, of course, is the fact that the Europeans are putting all their support behind Zelensky, so giving their full-throated support to pledges of money and arms and so forth.